our attorney, Aaron Siri, had the opportunity to depose under oath Dr. Stanley Plotkin, and he asked him this exact question: is a 5-day safety trial long enough to capture all of the side effects that people are complaining about from the hepatitis B vaccine?
Dr. Plotkin, this is the product, the manufacturer insert for Recombavax HB, correct?
Yes.
And the clinical trial experience would be found in section 6.1, correct? Correct? Dr. Plotkin?
Yes.
Okay. In section 6.1, when you look at the clinical trials that were done pre-licensure for Recombavax HB, how long does it say that safety was monitored after each dose?
Let's see. Uh, 5 days.
Okay. Is 5 days long enough to detect an autoimmune issue that arises after 5 days?
No.
Is 5 days long enough to detect any neurological disorder that arose from the vaccine after 5 days?
No.
There is no control group, correct?
It does not mention any control group, no.
No. If you turn to section 6.2, under the nervous system disorders, it states that there have been reports of Guillain-Barré syndrome, correct?
Yes.
As well as multiple sclerosis, exacerbation of multiple sclerosis, myelitis, including transverse myelitis, seizure, febrile seizure, peripheral neuropathy, including Bell's palsy, muscle weakness, hypothesia, and encephalitis, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now,
before you go on, these reports are required to be included because they have been reported to the authorities as happening after vaccination. That is not proof that the vaccine caused those reactions.
in order to establish whether it's causal between the vaccine and the condition, you need a randomized placebo-controlled study. But
Yes.
that was not done for this hepatitis B vaccine before licensure, was it?
No.
Okay.
Without a control group, if you're looking for a phenomenon occurring in the vaccine group, you cannot judge that phenomenon without having a control group.
Isn't it true that it would now be considered unethical to conduct such a study today?
It would be, yes, it would be ethically difficult.
So this is how the entire game is played. They don't do a safety placebo trial before the vaccine's licensed. Then when people start lining up with all of these serious side effects, you say, well, can you do a placebo-based trial now? And they'll say, no, it's unethical. So they won't do it before, they won't do it after there's injuries, and when they can't do a study, your doctor says to you, I haven't seen any studies that show that these injuries are being caused by the vaccine. Therefore, I'm going to assume they're safe.
Do you agree with the CDC's recommendation that babies receive a hepatitis B on the first day of life?
Yes.
You stated that hepatitis B doesn't cause encephalitis, right?
That's in my opinion, yes.
But the IOM, after doing its review, determined it couldn't find science to support a causal determination one way or another. Correct?
Yes. But that means that they don't have evidence for the supposition.
That it
Right.
either causes or doesn't cause.
Right.
They don't know.
They don't know because there aren't enough data. In the absence of data, my conclusion is that there's no proof that causation exists.
So if there's no data to show that it causes or it doesn't cause,
Yes.
your supposition, is that I understand correctly?
Yes.
Is that it doesn't cause it.
That there's no proof that it does.
Okay, that's different than saying it doesn't cause it, correct?
Correct.
So let's be clear. Vaccine safety is not based on science and data. It's based on an assumption of safety. And that is the stalemate we find ourselves in. But there's one way out of it. Instead of doing a placebo-based study, you can do a retrospective study looking at people that have already made their choice, whether they're going to vaccinate or not. And then you just compare those groups, the ones that got the vaccines and the ones that decided not to vaccinate. We call that the vaccinated versus unvaccinated study. It's been done by a few independent scientists and institutes amongst small groups of children, but never by a major government agency or a major medical facility. The reason this study is important, I think, is illustrated by a study that was done in Guinea-Bissau, Africa, by a man named Dr. Peter Abe. He's one of the lead experts, he's pro-vaccine, and he develops vaccine programs for the third world. He had a DTP vaccine program he'd run 30 years ago in Guinea-Bissau, Africa, and recognized 30 years later, you know what, only half the children in the country got that vaccine and the other half didn't. I could do a perfect comparative study between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And when he did that study, the results blew his mind.
This is about vaccines. And I think it's important to recognize that no routine vaccine was tested for overall effect on mortality in randomized trials before being introduced. I guess most of you think that we know what our vaccines are doing. We don't. The program we are talking about at the time, the vaccine program, was introduced sort of in the late 70s after the success with the eradication of smallpox. WHO made sort of the first immunization program for the low-income countries. What you comes out here, you had 2.3 times higher mortality if you are DTP vaccinated. And that is the most commonly used vaccine in the world. So the whooping cough vaccine or the pertussis vaccine was associated with twofold higher mortality. You can have a vaccine which is fully protective against a specific disease, but associated with higher mortality. How is that possible?
After looking at this study, it was clear that the vaccine did protect against the diseases they were vaccinated for. The kids didn't die of diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. Only one problem. Once they looked at it, they were dying at 5 times the rate of all of these other issues. So it was clear that though it was protecting against these diseases, it was weakening their immune systems to all sorts of other problems. One of the other scientists on this study did a TED Talk on this.
In spite of being protected against 3 deadly diseases, the introduction of DTP was associated with increased overall mortality. Children who received DTP vaccine had 5 times higher risk of dying than those who didn't. And this is just one example of many studies now done of DTP vaccine, and they all show the same. DTP vaccinated children have higher mortality than those who didn't get DTP. So it appears that DTP vaccine has negative non-specific effects. The protection against the 3 deadly diseases comes at a very high price, namely increased risk of dying. So, with the best of intentions, the use of DTP vaccine may kill more children than it saves. I know these results are extremely uncomfortable, and most people, including myself, just wish they weren't true. But this is what the data tells us.
That was just a study of one vaccine in a group of children. What if you studied children that were receiving not one vaccine, but between 72 and 100 vaccines by the time they're 18? Of course, I'm talking about the most vaccinated nation in the world, the United States of America.
Our federal health authorities actually paid the Institute of Medicine to look at the safety of the vaccine schedule as a whole. And the Institute of Medicine, after conducting that review, came back with a report in 2013. The report said no studies have compared the differences in health outcomes between entirely unimmunized populations of children and fully immunized children.
It's the CDC's responsibility to do those studies, and they've been ordered again and again and again to do them, and they have refused. But the Institute of Medicine has looked at the vaccine schedule and said in their 2011 report, there are over 150 injuries that are likely to be associated with vaccines that have never been studied.
Well, what did the CDC do after the Institute of Medicine issued that report?
Instead of doing the study, they ended up doing a study on how to do a vax versus unvax study.
It went and it paid a whole lot of money to issue a white paper on how to conduct that study comparing vaccinated versus unvaccinated kids. That white paper came out in 2015. Now, here we are in 2025, 10 years later. They've still never published that study. Now, have they never done the study? I can't tell you.
This is information that vaccine safety advocates want and have been asking for a long time, and I'm not sure why it hasn't been done.
This simple study would shut up every anti-vaxxer forever. I have to believe that they have done this study every way they possibly can, and they can't seem to figure out how to make it look like the vaccinated are healthier. But that's just my opinion, based on several other studies I've seen that did compare vaccinated to unvaccinated, but mainstream medicine says, well, the cohort was too small, or they poke holes in it saying it wasn't done by a major medical institution. So if we're ever going to get a vax versus unvaccinated study that people believe in, it's going to have to be done by highly credited scientists at a major medical institution who has a database big enough to do a thorough, robust investigation comparing the vaccinated to the unvaccinated.
As fate would have it, Dell met the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Health System, Marcus Servos.
I'll never forget that meeting because you said something to me. You said, "I've watched your film. It's intriguing." But you said, I'll never forget. You said you've been saying something. I watched your videos that I had an issue with. You said that they cannot say that vaccines are safe because they've never done the proper safety studies. And you said to me, I actually researched that because I wanted to see if that was true. And you said, I'm sorry to have to report to you that you're actually right about that.
No, I say it
proper
now, too.
safety studies have not been done.
And to now too, it's same thing. I still say it now. The proper safety studies haven't been done.
So then I said to you, all right.
Still true.
And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't agree with you. I believe in vaccines. And I said, would you ever consider doing a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study? And you said I would do anything wherever the data is the data, right?
Yeah.
The first time I met with Dr. Servos, he agreed to do a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study. I mean, I was ecstatic. He was perfect. Ford Medical Center is one of the greatest research centers in the world, and Dr. Servos is in the middle of being a hero for having just worked out the entire Flint, Michigan water crisis.
74 miles of large diameter pipeline will stretch
For decades, Flint, one of the poorest cities in America, had bought its water from Detroit. Instead of staying on the Detroit water supply while the pipeline was being built, the city would temporarily get its water from the Flint River. That decision would force the city to activate an old water treatment plant.
Here's the plant.
This is what is coming out of the tap.
Water's brown, has a bad odor.
We cannot drink the water.
They soon became a breeding ground for Legionella, and people were getting sick.
The oxygen, you're on that all the time, or do you ever get to take it?
I want it all the time.
Yeah.
Her doctor, Marcus Servos, had been treating a chronic skin infection that her weakened immune system couldn't control.
They are doing a lot better.
I'm ecstatic.
You know, if I can get them healed over a little bit more, I'm going to get you an appointment with those transplant doctors.
There'd been 90 confirmed cases in the year and a half following the water switch. 12 people had died. Sean McElmurray had pulled together a team of 23 scientists and experts from around the state. The team says the state wouldn't authorize them to start the search for the source of the outbreak. Dr. Servos was the infectious disease expert, and he was worried about the delay.
It was critical to start right away because by June, we expected to see more cases of Legionnaire's disease and there would be more deaths, which is what we expressed in a meeting that included top leadership at MDHHS.
I remember my colleague telling him that if he didn't do that, people could die. Unfortunately, Nick Lyon's response was that, well, they have to die of something.
I mean, you're just in shock as a result of him saying that, the director of the health department.
Dr. Servos seemed perfect. He'd stood up against the entire health system in Michigan, so I figured he'd probably be brave enough to do this study. But then a couple of years went by and still no study. I called Aaron and said, why don't we go see if we can't convince him to finally do this study?